Well, it's my privilege to welcome you. My name is Athena. Julia Caligaris is the full name. And right now I'm the executive director of the Enchanted Mountains Village, which is sponsoring this event. It's an organization now 3 years old, a nonprofit organization of members 55 and older who want to connect with one another. They're living in their home, they want to stay there, they might need resources, they want activities and events, and that's what we do. So there are brochures in that you can pick up as you go out about EMV, and Anna has put the little mnemonic on the bottom over there that you can see. So we're really happy you're here. And now Jean-Francois.
Yes, I'm very happy to, if needed, introduce Dr. Anna Foerst. We were colleagues at Bonaventure. Now I'm retired, still we know each other. And well, we have commonalities. We grew up neighbors. She is from Köln, Cologne in Germany, and I am from southern Belgium. So we're very close. But the thing is, I want to tell you that she has an interesting, unusual scholarship, mixing theology and computer science. And I like that because me personally, all my Franciscan research, also I used computer. In any case, I don't want to talk of myself, but I said that she will do, and we know because we had a previous experience, a wonderful experience of bringing what is going on and how we can fit in and not be abused from. In human thing, there are always two sides of the coin, something good and something bad. We shouldn't say, oh, it's all good or it's all bad. But what she will tell us is this is a progress of human intelligence. The artificial intelligence depends on human intelligence. But we know who we are. And she will lead us into how we can benefit from that. Am I right, Anna?
I try to.
Good.
Well, thank you very much, Jean-Francois. So I'm here today to talk about ChatGPT and a whole bunch of other AIs. Basically, AI is in everyone's mouth and everyone says, oh my God, and help. And some people use it enthusiastically. I'm one of them. Some people are really scared of them. I'm one of them. So there's lots of ways to deal with AI. And I thought I'd start with a little cartoon. No? Oh, I have to do this one. Yeah, okay. That's unfortunately the truth. So no one really knows where they are going. No one really knows what the consequences are, but everyone tries to implement them as fast as possible. And so I thought I offered to give this talk here through EMB because I want to demystify it. And just, I don't know if you read in the newspapers, just now OpenAI, the company which developed ChatGPT, the company which was the first company who developed a GPT, actually went from non-profit to profit. And the whole board resigned. And it's a huge scandal right now, because as long as it was a nonprofit, they were dedicated to make ethical use of ChatGPT and other AI. And now that they are for profit, they can do with it whatever. And they have, of course, mounds of data collected through all the years where people were using the GPTs, because everything is recorded that you do with them. To help them learn. And so that's just the newest development, and I thought I'd get it out of the way. I did my slides before that happened, but I thought I'd put this cartoon first to mention it. Okay, so GPT stands for Generative Pre-trained Transformer. So what does that mean? It is an artificial intelligence that generates text. It has been pre-trained on the World Wide Web, and not on the dynamic living World Wide Web, but what is called a cached version, a version that has been downloaded and stored. Which is what that means is that you cannot, for instance, book flights with an AI, because they don't have access to the live internet. But they're constantly updating what they have. So they are not trained on the live internet, but by now they, of course, are trained through all the many different millions of people that have used it. And transformers means they take an input that we give them and transform that input through their programming into an output. So that's GPT. So I've mentioned the term artificial intelligence several times now. Artificial intelligence is that part of computer science that builds machines that have capabilities for we as humans assume intelligence to be necessary. Now let me say that again. It is that part of computer science that builds machines that are capable of doing things for which we assume intelligence to be necessary. Okay? Now, the problem with that definition is, of course, that what is intelligence? Some people think chess playing is the pinnacle of intelligence. I hope that's not the case, because I'm lousy at it. But some people think, well, actually, moving in the world is intelligence. So we don't know what intelligence is, but there is no better definition of AI. That's just what it is. So basically, a computer that can do things where we say, wow, that's really smart. That would be AI. And believe me, the machines are still totally dumb, but they can behave as if they were smart. And they are getting better at that. So within artificial intelligence is an area that's called machine learning, ML. And machine learning is that part of artificial intelligence that enables machines to learn on their own without explicitly be programmed to do so. Okay? So let me just give you two kinds of learning and two examples for that learning. So the first kind of learning is supervised learning, where basically humans provide the machine with labels, and the labels puts all the data it gets into these pre-configured labels. For instance, AIs have become really good in cancer detection. What they did was they fed the machines millions and millions and millions of images, some with benign tumors, some with malign tumors. And after a while, the system learns to automatically detect if a tumor is bad or good. And they have been really better, and by now they are better than humans at that. So today, when you get an MRI or a CAT scan or anything like that for cancer detection, it is automatically fed into an AI, and the AI is the first one that says, right? So that is supervised learning. You think you understand what supervised learning is? Okay, now unsupervised learning is actually the more interesting one of it. That is the kind of learning where you feed the data, where you feed the computer tons and tons and tons of raw data. No labels, no categories, no nothing, just the data. And the machine then will learn to find correlations between the data and to create categories for itself. the newest result of that kind of unsupervised learning was they actually followed an elephant tribe, and they taped them and they filmed them and they fed all that data from years and years of following that tribe into a machine. And the machine helped them realize that actually elephants have names. So that actually they realize that they have certain calls, specific calls, and the machine would recognize that out of all the noise. And then they realize that the noise is made towards a specific elephant. So thanks to machine learning, they were able to realize, wow, elephants actually have names. That's pretty amazing, I think. So that's a really good example for unsupervised learning. The downside is that, of course, they can come up with categories that might be racist, classist, sexist, thank you. So for instance, let's say I feed the computer a picture of 100 people, 50 wear glasses, 50 don't, 50 are black, 50 are white, 50 wear pants, 50 wear skirts, right? And the system will most likely choose black and white as category to sort the people into. Why? Because it has learned from the web, and it has learned the category black versus white. And so that is the category it will use. So in other words, and I come later back to that, unsupervised learning can lead to bias and biased categories. But all the AIs you read about, the GPTs, they're all unsupervised learning. Get the difference between supervised and unsupervised? Cool. So let's just talk time, and this is the most technical slide of them all, okay? I promise everything else will be easy, simpler. But you need to understand some basic terminology. So the most important terminology for any GPT or for any of those AIs is, we call them actually large language models, LLMs. ChatGPT is the most famous one. There's Claude, and there's a whole bunch of other ones. So I talk now about an LLM, okay, a large language model. So the most important term for a large language model is a token. And a token is the basic unit of input, output, learning, and prediction. So that can be, a token can be a word, a phrase, a letter, a number, anything like that. It's the smallest unit the LLM deals with, all right? And then we have a whole bunch of parameters, and parameters are rules. And those rules assign a numeric value to each one of the token. And those rules determine the behavior of the model. In other words, they show which token comes next. And again, I go more into it. Right now we are talking terminology. Embeddings are vectors. Does anyone know here what a vector is? Vectors are arrows, and they are defined by their direction and by their length. Okay? So each token has a vector assigned to it. Okay? And of course, each vector is unique. And all these vectors together create something that is called meaning space. They basically design meaning. And then we have an encoder that takes the input tokens and runs them through its program. And then we have a decoder that takes the program results and turns it into an output. Basically, here is what it is. Imagine a basket full of tennis balls, all right? Mm-hmm. So each of these tennis balls has a vector pointing to it, okay? An arrow pointing to it. So each vector is assigned a unique number, okay? This is a three-dimensional system, right? Length, width, height. So basically, when the system goes to predict the next vector coming and the next token coming in the sentence, and that's all it does. An LLM predicts, that's all it does. So it basically goes through the token that came in the input, and looks at all the closest tokens around it and construes the output from the closest tokens. How does it know that the tokens are close? Because the vector numbers are similar. No, not clear? Okay. Forget about vectors. Forget about vectors. Forget about vectors. You have a basket with tennis balls. They are defined by how close they are.
Okay.
Okay?
Mhm.
So when a system gets an input, it takes basically, it ignores the and in and those kind of things. It basically takes the verbs and the nouns and searches for the equivalent token in their huge token box.
You're
Okay?
looking for the shortest distance to the next ball.
Right, exactly. So basically, it looks at the balls that are closest to the ball of the input. Does that make sense? So it takes basically, so again, you have this bunch of tennis balls, right, in a box. And you point to one ball. And the system then will take all the neighboring balls in 3 dimensions. Okay, so there are ones, some above, some below, some left, some right, some half left, and so on. And those are the tokens out of which it will construe its output.
Okay,
Does that make sense?
but aren't there a bunch of them
Yes,
equally close?
but there are also a bunch of tokens in the question, in the input.
How does it know how far to go? I don't know. Then it goes out. Take the nearest one.
Basically, let's say, tell me about cats. Okay, and we'll find the token that represents cats. And then it looks in the whole neighborhood. What are the tokens around cats?
So it would be based on cat association.
Correct,
Oh, that I can do.
okay?
It was the balls.
Yeah, so every token is represented by a ball. So basically, so I've said 3 dimensions, right? Now, let's just say cat on the ground are all mammals.
Okay,
And cat is one token of that. So I know mammal. Then on the next dimension, it says predator.
Okay.
Then I know predator. On the next dimension, it says playful. So I know playful. On the next dimension, poops in a box. Now that's pretty unique cat. Right? On the next dimension, it might say beautiful. Right? Elegant, whatnot. So basically we have a multidimensional space, and each token is represented on each dimension and connected with other tokens on each dimension. And always it talks about the neighboring ones. Does that make sense?
So like for the balls, it would be like round, bounce, like stuff like that. You know, I'm trying to like, I'm not a cat person. So.
Let me give you another example. Boat. On one dimension, it would be a machine. On another dimension, it would be something that swims. On the other dimension would be something for recreation. On another dimension, it would be something for transport. Right? So by having a multi-dimensional room and not these pitiful 3 dimensions, but actually a lot of more dimensions, you can basically, the neighboring tokens are much more than in a 3-dimensional space. Basically, in a 3-dimensional space, you can have a token up, down, left, right.
Yeah.
Okay. Right, so you can have 6 tokens around. But in a multi-dimensional space, you can have as many tokens around this one token you want to understand as possible. Okay, and remember the parameters? The parameters are basically the rules for the token output. And they ask what is the most likely token to come out of it? So I say, what is a cat? System searches for the token cat, searches all the dimensions, and spews out all what it could find out in its internal system about a cat. Now, when I say, are cats playful? It would basically see, on one dimension, playful and cat are next to one another. So it would answer yes. Okay? When I now ask a question, do you like cats or dogs better? Now here's an interesting thing. There's a parameter. The LLM does not have preferences, but it does not, because it does not want to hurt people. So what it will do is it will spit out, I'm an artificial intelligence system. I don't have personal opinions. Here's what cats laugh about. Cat lovers laugh about cats. And then again, the search through the dimensions. And here's what dog lovers love about dogs. And then again through the dimension. Okay? And it does that, and I'm very glad that they changed that, because that was not the case in the earliest versions of GPTs. So for instance, if you ask it for, tell me your opinion about abortion, which is, as we all know, a very, very hot topic. It will basically go and says, I'm a ChatGPT, I don't have a personal opinion. Here's what speaks for pro-life, here's what speaks for pro-choice. And basically, more or less make up your own mind. But it gives very, very good information for both sides. So that's actually kind of cool. You get kind of the inkling that you understand what's going on here.
Could this change though with the for-profit situation?
No, the basic working cannot change.
Okay.
The basic working cannot change. But what will change is so far the data that was fed into the system, and I come later back to the data, but the data we fed it by interacting with it was proprietary, not used for other things. Now it could be used for other things.
Gotcha, thank you.
Which means I will use it much less, but yeah. So you get dimensions, multi-dimensions, you get tokens, okay? Now here's the problem. There are about 40,000 reasonably common used words in English. And ChatGPT and the other LLMs know also the not reasonably commonly used ones. So just put in this basket 40,000 words. That makes it extremely complex. And believe, as for me, for whom American English is the second language, this language has so many damn words. It's just unbelievable. Because you get words from all other languages, right? So it was pretty tricky to learn. I still, but okay.
Although Anna, Shakespeare had 80,000.
80,000?
Yes.
I'm glad that some of them are dead words.
I know. I totally agree.
So we have 40,000 reasonably common used words. So a lot of possible totals. Currently, ChatGPT has 14,000 dimensions. That's huge, right? Because that basically means that each token is crossed by 14,000 different planes where it has different neighbors. And that's the loveliest number of them all, there are about 170 billion parameters, rules to actually do the totals. No one understands how LLMs works, not even the people who build it. And so some of the parameters LLMs learned on their own, like connecting the tokens that are close to one another, right? Sentence completion they learned, all these kind of things they learned. Some parameters are built top down, which means they are put on top of it, like for instance, the parameter that an LLM doesn't give an opinion. So for instance, when I ask ChatGPT to tell me a racist joke, it won't do that. And I think that's very, very good. However, as we will see later, you can make it quite well being racist, unfortunately. So things basically to take away from this brief introduction into LLMs. No one knows how ChatGPT exactly forms its embeddings, the way it connects the tokens. And no one knows how a prompt specifically generates an LLM output. Okay, no one. What is actually interesting, and that brings up a whole slew of questions about justice, the same prompt, there's a randomization factor in there, so the same prompt generates different answers. So I cannot tell my students, please go and prompt the system X, Y, Z, because one may get a really long and profound answer, and one might get a few sentences. So yeah, and so the tuning, the creating actually parameters is more of an art than a science. Obviously, the people who built it are better at that than anyone else, but it's luck. And sometimes they mess up terribly. I don't know if you read just recently, I think it was 4 weeks ago, that OpenAI was very proud because they finally enabled ChatGPT to do math. At the beginning, it was good at math, and then the more input it got, the less good it became at math, because people didn't ask it math questions, and so they had to reteach ChatGPT math. And now actually it's on the level of an AI Olympian, meaning 10th, 11th grade high school, which is pretty good. And the other thing I want you to understand, because every token has a number, and the system has no idea of the meaning of cat, dog, whatnot. It thinks in numbers, if it thinks at all, because ultimately it doesn't think. All it does is statistically line up the tokens and therefore create an output. And therefore, LLMs are definitely not conscious. There are a lot of people who think, oh my God, they're conscious. No, they're not. They are not self-reflective. So it gives a stupid answer. You ask it, this answer was really stupid. Can you give me something better? And then it says, I apologize, and spits out the same answer or a very similar answer. Okay, so yeah.
So all the tokens are numbers, but it spits everything out back to us in words.
Correct. Because the token is a word, it just has no clue what the word means because the word is internally represented by a number.
Yes.
You know what a bit is?
No.
A bit is a 1 or a 0.
Okay,
You know what a byte is? A byte is 8 bits. There are 256 possibilities to arrange 8 bits on 8 places. So there are 256 different bytes. And each one of those bytes correlates with a letter, with a number, with a capital letter, with a small letter, with various twiggly signs on that, and so on. That is how internally does the representation. In Japan and China, they use a different system, obviously, but that's the system we use here. My opinion is also they cannot be smart because they are not embodied. We are embodied creatures. We have evolved over evolution. Our intelligence emerges out of physical interactions with others and the environment. And so I would argue an LLM, which is fundamentally disembodied, cannot be smart. And I'm not alone with that opinion. That's actually a whole field that calls itself embodied artificial intelligence. So we do not believe that those systems can be smart. And there is this problem of anthropomorphization, meaning everything with which we interact that interacts with us, we think is human, or we treat as human. That's just automatic. Makes sense. Because from early on, from birth on, everything we interact with is human. And when we have toys, they become humans for us, right?
Mhm.
Because that's just the way they are. And when we automatically assume everything is human, then we automatically interact with it like it was human. And so we project a whole bunch of things into whatever we interact with. My car is a he. I mean, definitely, right? Yeah. I know I project things into my cat. I probably just a glorified can opener for her, right? But I think she loves me and all these kind of things, right? So we anthropomorphize, of course, an LLM the most because we can interact with it through language, right? And it also gives us the very interesting thing. So first of all, it calls its output answers, which is anthropomorphizing, right? Because an answer is something from a human, it's an output, nothing but a statistical output. And then it refers to itself as I. So there are all these things that make us anthropomorphize it. And I think that is why so many people believe it's conscious. I hope you really understand why it's not. No. However, there are plenty of other problems we can talk about that LLMs raise. So let's just talk about some of them. So I talked already about biased training data. The systems are biased. They give us as machines the illusion of objectivity, right? We believe, oh, a machine cannot be biased, it's objective. But it has been trained on the web. And we all know on the web is a lot of hate speech. There's a lot of really nasty things out there. I kind of like it because it actually holds a mirror to us, because the LLM spits out, which is the product of human interactions, and a lot of that is hate speech. And but basically we have to be aware that the systems are as biased as we are. And there's this really beautiful example. Amazon gets a lot of application, and so they wanted to automatize that process. So they fed the machine all the data of successful hires, right? And then send it out to scour through CVs and basically give them the best possible candidates. It worked great. There was only one problem that they noticed only after a while. The system was never recommending women. So all the suggested people were men. Why? Because Amazon had mostly hired men. And so the data the system was trained on was all male. So it automatically assumed a perfect hire of Amazon has to be male. Oops. That's how bias ends up in those machines, okay? It's basically those machines can only handle the data that we feed into that if the data is biased, racist, classist, sexist, the output is too.
Alan,
Yeah.
we always say that they're reflecting who we are.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. This is what I mean with a mirror, right? Oh yeah, absolutely. And it's not a fun picture.
Nope.
The next huge problem, especially during a presidential election, is misinformation. So first of all, the machines confabulate. In the media, that is usually referred to as hallucination. In the AI community, we don't like the term hallucination at all because it's, again, anthropomorphizing, right? As if the machine were self-aware and had hallucinations. No. It's a confabulation. It's something entirely made up. And there was this very famous example of a lawyer who submitted a brief to a judge, and the brief was entirely made up. All the cases that were cited in the brief were all made up. None of them existed real. It was completely made up. The lawyer lost his license, rightly so, because using a system for that is just, yeah, you shouldn't do it. So I was for actually the first 2 years of GPT's existence, I was a dead Catholic nun. I know I'm not dead, and I'm also not Catholic, and I'm certainly not a nun. So yes, so it makes up stuff, and no one knows exactly where it comes from. So, and when you ask it where it got the information from, it quotes, but the quotes are mostly made up too. So yes, they made up things. So there's a lot of stuff you cannot be trusted. We are already living in a society with what sociologists dub truth decay. That basically what is true and what is false is not anymore agreed upon. We have facts, we have alternative facts, we have facts that are facts and are not seen as facts, we have alternative facts that are not facts but are seen as facts, right?
Mhm.
It's a huge problem. And these machines will actually make it worse. Because they can be used to spread information. You probably all have heard the term bot. Bot are little independent creatures on the web that crawl around and pop up on various websites. They make up answers, they react to stuff, and they are now fed by LLMs. So, for instance, Russia is very invested in the outcome of this election. And one of the things that was 4 years ago, there were already bots that spewed misinformation about a certain presidential candidate. But this year it's way worse because the bots are not fed by LLMs. So they're perfect English. So it's not anymore recognizable as someone from a foreign country. And an LLM can create millions and millions of bots in a second. So they're all over. So LLMs help to spread misinformation, which is a major problem. Now, it would be lovely if we were all able to critically receive information we get, reflect on it, and realize if it's right or wrong. Well, we suffer from what is usually referred to as information overload. We get so much information that we basically usually don't reflect. We just accept it if it fits our worldview and reject it if it doesn't. So these systems are very dangerous because they can spew misinformation. And again, it's the illusion of objectivity when we ask it something. Then there's this whole question of justice and legality. Now, people in my field believe that instead of diversity, equity, and inclusion, DEI, it should actually be DEIA, diversity, equity, inclusion, and access. Already the most complex LLMs are behind a paywall, so you have to actually pay if you want to use them. And the big problem of that is, of course, that people or institutions with less money have less access to the AI, which is unjust. We also have much more criminality outside because those machines are good at coding. And they don't distinguish between good code and bad code. A bad code that hacks into systems, spews viruses, destroys systems, and so on and so on. So people can use these machines to write what is called malware, software that attacks machines. There are also deepfake audio scams. Well, there are video scams too, but let me just stick with audio scams because they are simpler. So the system needs 3 seconds of your voice to completely mimic your voice. So 3 seconds, and then it can basically say in your voice whatever it wants. So there's already the scam. You get called by your bank teller, and the bank teller is fake. But because they hacked into the system, they know all about you, and they ask you for your password. Well, you trust them because this is the voice of your bank teller, right? Politicians use where they speak and their voice comes. So far, consumers were really put off by that and hung up immediately when they realized the voice was an AI. But I'm sure that's the future. So these systems can actually mimic someone so perfectly that it can be used for all sorts of bad stuff. Then there's, of course, the whole issue of information theft. Basically, the systems were all trained on the data on the web. A lot of the data on the web is copyrighted. Well, they didn't care. They were trained on it. So the New York Times has been suing OpenAI, the company who built ChatGPT, for using their data. And Scarlett Johansson was a brilliant voice in the movie Her, which I can highly recommend, where she actually plays the intelligent voice assistant for someone's phone. Oh, it's such a great movie. But because the movie was so great, they actually mimicked her voice and put them on a speaking LLM, and she sued them, so they had to take the voice down. A searching the web means they scour every information. That means also personal information. So information theft is very easy, and something that has become more and more popular, which is called doxing. Doxing means to publish someone's address and phone number and stuff like that. So if you don't like someone, if someone says something you don't like, you publish their address, and they get threats and stuff like that. So that online hatred can actually translate into the real world. Not a pretty thing. And actually, just one other thing, I just recently read that they actually use mugshots for training the system with facial recognition. And that is, of course, done without the consent of the person of whom the mugshot was taken. So they are trained by a lot of dubious data. The euphemism for all that is data mining, right? You probably all have heard data mining. And you don't think when you hear the term data mining, it sounds so harmless, that there's actually something very sinister going on. Then, of course, the whole issue of privacy. If you ask ChatGPT if it keeps your information private, it will say yes, but in the user manual, it clearly stated everything you type into ChatGPT is used for furthering the system. So ChatGPT lies in this particular instance. Lots of people, because they anthropomorphize, they give the system personal information, don't do that. Just don't do that. Yes, of course, they can be used for surveillance. The NSA uses them, the ICE uses them. There's this company called Vigilant Solutions. They are an automatic license plate recognition system. So you point it to someone's license plate and it spits out the owner and the address and everything like that. And of course, that means it can help authoritarian leaders. Those systems are very popular in dictatorships. But the question is, of course, to what extent can our leaders resist the temptation to gather a lot of data? In terms of privacy, there is this myth that a lot of people say to me, I don't care if they know everything about me. I have nothing to hide. Well, the problem with that is that this understands privacy as something, what's the term I'm looking for? As something for something else. It doesn't see privacy as something intrinsic. Privacy is linked to human dignity. We only have our dignity if we have privacy, because we have the right to make mistakes without them being spread all over the web and people making fun of us. That is the only way to grow, to learn, to develop our character. All that is threatened because of the constant surveillance of both LLMs and social media. I think I'm nearly done with my time, so I don't want to talk about the environmental impact, which is pretty bad. Let's just talk quickly about LLMs in my work. I'm a professor. I use it to prepare lessons. I give it a topic and say, prepare me a lesson plan. I have group work. I have 3 groups. Give me 3 different group works. It does it perfectly. Sometimes I have to ask it several times, but it usually does a pretty good job. It gives me activities. I'm teaching a lot of ethics. So I'm teaching computer ethics and cybersecurity ethics. And sometimes I want to come up with scenarios that my students actually do. It does a pretty good job with that. So coming up with scenarios that I can discuss with my students. And teaching, I have gotten back to having essay exams because my students need to learn the stuff, because I'm not sure if their papers are written by ChatGPT or not. So I give quizzes. It's more grading for me, but it definitely, and I don't give multiple choice because an LLM can do that. I give essay exams. And I ask my students explicitly, whenever they have to read a text, to give me a ChatGPT summary and their own summary. And then they have to write a critique of the LLM summary. And they usually find some flaws. Sometimes they say the summary was perfect, but very rarely. Usually they find some flaws, and this way they learn in college already from day one that these systems are great. They're a great help to summarize text, but they have flaws. So in other words, education has to fundamentally change. It's not anymore fact knowledge because we have that with LLMs. It's really what we need to teach them in college is resilience, empathy, agency, leadership, and communication skills. Those are the things we have to aim for, because those are the things they need, and those things cannot be replaced by a machine. Which brings me to the final question, LLMs and jobs. The argument is that LLMs can outsource boring jobs, entry-level programming, minute taking, those kind of things, and make it much better, and therefore leave people with more exciting things to do. But what happens to all the people who make their money by writing intro code, right? By doing minute taking. I mean, you saw that with the Hollywood strike, right? The people, yes, they went on strike because they realized that LLMs can take their jobs. So basically, menial jobs were first lost through machines, right? Now LLMs are taking away white collar jobs. And so basically what we have to think about in the future, the Nemat Minu Shafik, she was the president of Colombia. She resigned as one of the many presidents because of the Palestine conflict. But she was the president of Columbia University. She said, in the past, jobs were of muscles. Now they're about brains, but in the future, they'll be about the heart. And so this is the encouragement I can give you. Our best hope is being the best humans we can be. Because then we provide them data that is not biased. And that is also something they cannot beat us. Yeah.
You said that the basic learning was done through a cache version of
Mhm.
the World Wide Web, or all the data that was on the web at a certain point.
Mhm.
But it must be learning new stuff, because new stuff is put in there, or is it just impossible to look at data as it progresses?
Yes, the internet changes too much constantly. Because I mean, even if you take a stable website, let's say like Reuters, okay, the news agency. It changes constantly its content, right? So even if you have a stable URL, web address, it constantly changes. And the system cannot learn from that. So it has to be a cached version. Now it was that ChatGPT itself had data till January 22. I think they updated it and they keep on updating it, but it's never dealing with the actual live web. It's always a stored version, a static version. Yeah.
I was wondering, on the cached version, it also means like there's so many things cataloged from history over time. So that also would be part of the learning. Meaning stories that were not true necessarily, and certainly very racist and sexist. And the, you know, there's a huge number of years that was the case. I'm not saying this very well because I'm just thinking about the magnitude of texts that would have been as a part of, would have existed as part of within that cache. I mean,
A colleague
it's
of mine.
phenomenal, the Library of Congress,
Yeah.
I can't think of the place you can go and you can get all the old books and you can print them because they're out of copyright. So all those.
That's called
texts-
Gutenberg Project.
Yeah.
Yeah, a colleague of mine in history, she actually told me this very interesting thing. She was asking it about something, and it basically went to a novel and quoted from that novel as historical fact.
That's enough.
And luckily, she had read the novel and she recognized it. Wait a moment, that's not fact. That's this, and this novel. So yeah, because it has no understanding of myth, of novel, of made up stuff, right? It has no understanding of hate, of love, of anything like that. It doesn't understand that. And so it just grabs what within its world is embedded in its token connections.
So is ChatGPT like an app, or is it just like out on the World Wide Web? Or how do you get it?
There's an app for
There's an app,
ChatGPT,
okay.
yeah. If you want to do really complex stuff, I always recommend the computer version.
Mhm.
So when you actually go through their website,
Mhm.
you again, we can do it right now, I mean, if you want to.
See, you're good.
Cat?
Yes.
Green eyes.
Although I don't have any. Sorry, we can't do it. I don't have any internet here.
Okay. It's okay.
So,
Uh-oh.
they're storing all this on the GPT server someplace,
Yeah.
that must be, I mean, I'm a computer guy, that's gotta be massive.
It's huge. It's huge. And again, the environmental impact that I didn't mention, let me just give you two numbers. One is they believe that by 2030, 9% of all US energy use will go to AI. 9% because of these huge servers. And B, to generate one image with an AI that uses the equivalent in energy to a cell phone charge, a full cell phone charge, one image. That gives you kind of an idea of how massive these servers
I
are.
know there's different learning models out there.
Right.
Because I've been looking at the possibility of building a small server that gives all these learning modules that are in, the public,
Public domain.
yeah, what is it? Open source. Huh? Open source.
Open
thank you.
source, yes. Yeah, actually, I know a guy, he's a computer scientist, and he built actually a ChatGPT father of his. So he wanted his children to interact with his father, and his father died when they were very young. And so he basically fed the system all the letters that his father ever wrote, everything he knew about his father, tons of information, and now the kids can interact with granddad.
Yeah, but if that didn't include things like spankings and discipline.
No, the parents don't do that stuff, only the parents do that stuff.
Unreasonable database.
Yeah, this was.
So this is like we're dealing with a huge and still increasing database
Mhm.
of human knowledge, communication, and everything that can be used. But this is where you're telling us we have to be taught, we have to learn how to use it
Mhm.
positively.
Mhm.
Because like everything human, it can be used negatively.
Oh, very much so, I
And
mentioned that.
and
yeah.
then we can be the victims of it.
Mhm.
Yes,
Mhm.
that's what I get of the whole thing.
You had a question?
Yes, so you mentioned there were 14,000 dimensions, I think.
Well, that's the current, that's the newest number I could find.
That's a hardware or software limitation, and do we know what they are, or is that something that when it sucks in the data set, it creates on its own?
Yes, as I said, it is unsupervised learning.
Okay,
So it created, a year ago, when I started my research, it was 13,000 dimensions, and the newest number is 14,000 dimensions, but that's already a couple of months old, so I'm not sure if that's still the accurate number. It basically creates these categories, and these categories need to be overlapping because they need to be connected.
so could you ask it to say, spit me all the stuff out that's in this particular category and try and figure out what it really means?
I tried that, it doesn't do it. Yeah, I mean, there is this theory that we would actually have to build an AI that would be specifically designed to understand ChatGPT. But because a human being can't.
Mhm.
Yeah, that would be fascinating if you could actually get it as in our workings, but I tried it in so many different ways, I was not able to get anything interesting out of it.
Thanks.
Yeah.
If you ask it to produce you a paper, say,
Mhm.
you give it a specific question, and then 2 weeks later you give the same question, would the production be identical?
No. No, because there's randomization built in. So it gives the output consists of tokens that are in the class of most likely. Okay, the most likely token that comes next, but it's never the single most likely. It comes from the group of most likely. So there is a randomization built in. And that means that when you give the same prompt, it gives you different answers. Yeah. Yeah, Athena.
If you don't have a used GPT, let's say I'm just Googling something, question.
By now, Google is driven by AI.
Oh, okay. Okay, my question is like in healthcare, and I usually go to reputable sources,
Right.
but how do I know that they haven't used the AI that is not
You don't.
factual?
You don't. That is what I mean with truth decay. I mean, even reputable sources now build up a lot of their data with the help of AI. And because AI is biased and gets a lot of stuff wrong and confabulates, right? Cannot know anymore if the information is actually accurate.
The better sites should make a declaration of their AI use or intention. So if you're going to the New York Times, they're gonna tell you that this image was generated with AI.
Right,
But the article was written by a human.
yes, the New York Times is very good in that.
Mayo Clinic.
Mayo Clinic is probably the same thing, yes. I'm right now in a dialogue with Wikipedia. I give Wikipedia every year a considerable sum of money because I want them to stay around. And this year I'm hesitant because I read that they generate some of the answers with AI. And so I sent them a letter and said, I only donate if you can assure me that your answers are written by humans. I haven't heard anything. So they're probably not getting money from me
Yeah,
anymore.
interesting.
What kind of policies has this, have arisen at universities around using AI?
Well, there's this little thing called academic freedom. So in other words, you cannot force professors to do something which they don't want, unless it's, I mean, obviously we have to obey the law, right? But so we, meaning my two colleagues and me in computer science, we got the Bonaventure has these grants called Keenan grants that are for faculty development. And so we got last year a considerable sum that enabled us to do research on the use of ChatGPT in the classroom. And then we wrote a paper which got into a very prestigious conference that made us very, very happy. And this paper was the basis for 3 workshops we ran. The workshops were open to every faculty member. We offered dinner, we couldn't pay them obviously, but we offered dinner and was all paid by the grant. And a total of 45 colleagues out of 160 came.
Yeah,
Because the vast majority of Bonaventure professors, and it's not just Bonaventure, it's all over the higher ed, they basically say, I don't use it, I don't allow my students to use it, that's it. But one colleague who shall remain nameless said to me recently, I'm really amazed the quality of my students' papers really has improved.
Well, I remember in college, and I go back a long way, so I've got 2 questions. Calculators, handheld calculators were just coming out. Now, I was taking a course in fluid flow and everything is to the 2.135 power.
Yeah,
I sat in that class taking a 1-hour test for 2.5 hours. The professor had to kick me out. There was 4 of us didn't have calculators, we were 4 of them. All the others were done in 15 minutes, so they had to make some kind of an adjustment. Because that's technology that if you don't embrace it, and you're in a professional field, I mean, I don't have to do this is curiosity, but you can't keep that buggy forever.
yeah, especially when someone is so illusioned by thinking the students' papers have improved when all what they do is go to ChatGPT and have ChatGPT write their papers, right? They don't even make their assignments ChatGPT proof, right? I mean, basically, when I give papers, they always have to relate whatever they are doing to what we did last week in class and to the readings that we read and they have to give a personal take on that. Those 3 questions are GPT proof, because GPT does not know what we did in class, it doesn't know the readings we read, and it definitely doesn't know their personal opinion. So you can make your assignment not GPT proof, but make it harder for them to go to ChatGPT. And I much rather, because I mean, my students, every student I know, they come back from their internship and they had to use ChatGPT or another LLM. I mean, that's the world of today. All businesses use LLMs. So we better teach them a really good critical use of LLMs, where they know their limitations, but also their choices, so that they actually can be good in using them.
Yeah, just as long as they got, I mean, I don't have a problem with a guy designing a bridge with a calculator. As long as they check the work, and the same thing would be true. You know, in technical
I would be hesitant to trust an architect to build me a house or a bridge or anything like that with ChatGPT.
Okay, there's 14,000 data points. Would that be equivalent to like a 14 by 14,000 array?
Yes.
Yeah. Only that it has 14,000 dimensions.
Yeah, so it's a 14,000 by 14,000 array, that's huge.
Yeah,
Whatever the square of 14,000 is, I can't do that in my head, I need my calculator.
yeah, it's huge. It's just, I mean, it is so complex, and that is why we don't know how it works.
That's why it takes so much power and
Yeah.
storage capacity.
Yeah.
Okay.
At some point, though.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So first you and then you.
At some point, do you think though that, for example, someone could build a building on this? And I had a conversation this weekend with a young woman who was going to school for architecture next year. And she said, I'm not gonna go in for regular architecture because I think that's gonna be all AI. So I'm going into restorative architecture because AI won't be able to do that. I mean, is that actually real?
I mean, a lot of architecture is computerized, but the engineering part, the energy part, all those kind of pieces are still done by architects. I mean, will there be systems that can do them? Yes, but those systems will have to be specifically designed for architecture with all the math and engineering knowledge. A general LLM would not be able to do that. Those are called expert systems. Those are systems that are only fed specific data for a specific field.
Okay, it would be a supervised thing or not? Like one of those
I
supervised?
think it
things?
would be a mixture of supervised and unsupervised.
Okay.
You had a question?
Yeah, is the reason we're using 2-year-old data because it takes that long to build the model?
Yeah.
So somewhere someone is building a model from today's internet that'll be finished processing in a couple of years, presumably.
Right, but then that data is already updated.
Right, okay,
Yeah.
I got you.
Yeah. So again, the real hope is that ultimately an LLM would be so smart in parentheses, as you realize they are really dumb, but would be so capable that it could actually search the live internet, but we are by no means there at all. Yeah.
So you said all those data are stored digitally, like numbers
Mhm.
that will then be converted into characters, letters, understandable for us. It's wonderful to have a database of knowledge like that. But as you said, if we want to use it, we are in charge of putting the heart in it,
Mhm.
of staying in control of the meaning of the whole thing.
Mhm.
And we can do that.
Mhm. Yes, and that is what we have to work towards, right?
Yes.
A lot of times we have tried to become like machines.
Yes.
You know, the more machines have been used in various fields of labor, the more we have become like machines. For me, as the ultimate image is always the Moloch, it's Fritz Lang's. I don't know if you have ever seen Fritz Lang, the mega Metropolis. Metropolis, a very old German black and white movie. It's 8 hours long and it's amazing. And there's this huge, fantastic image where you have this huge machine and basically all these humans move like that to keep the machine going, right? It's a really, really powerful image. And so in a way we have become that. And I think the best way to deal with the AI, which is in our life, the cat is out of the bag, cannot go back. That we basically resist to become like them and become more like ourselves.
Yes,
That's I think the only chance we have
yes,
to stay human and stay relevant.
yes.
Thank you.
I think, thank you. This has been really.
All right.
Yes, thank you.
Very
Oh, yeah. I remember, yeah.
Was it-
Guy rules, yeah.